Yes, I did cleverly wait till I got to Personal Log 64 when I talk about looking back. This will be the second most nostalgia system I have for when it comes to my gaming memories here. So here we are, up to Personal Log number 64. This will be called Gaming Memories N64. Nintendo 64, I would say, ultimately is the system that I'm the second most nostalgic for, only behind the Nintendo Entertainment System that kind of started it all here. But how my video game journey went is I remember owning the Nintendo Entertainment System there, and then when I upgraded to the 16-bit era, I ultimately decided to go with the Sega Genesis. So I definitely have gaming memories of that. But I also do have some gaming memories excuse me, of the Super Nintendo from, playing in their friends' houses there and over the years. So I had a Sega Genesis, and then I moved to the Sony PlayStation there, and I had some good and bad memories with that system there, just the way it was designed there. But then after that, I ultimately went to the Nintendo 64 there, and I had that for a few years before what I talked about in the last Personal Log, that I actually, when I felt I had less time to play games at home, that I decided to get a handheld, the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance there. So that was my last Personal Log, but this one will solely talk about the Nintendo 64 and gaming memories I have from that, and I might actually stir a debate here on what is the best of this particular game, because actually that was the first time I actually played a particular series here, and I still find today, here we are in 2020, that I still get giddy when I play it, and I still think is the best there. So I'll get to that and might stir some debate here, and feel free to comment on any gaming memories that you have there. But before I get started with the N64 here, Personal Logs is one of the things I do here, but I'd also have some Calgary Flames gear on because I'm a Calgary sports fan. I talk about Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders primarily here. So you can follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey here. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and follow along with that bell icon. Personal Log is Tempt Economy, and I also share some experiences with my smartphone at sporting events or when I'm on the road here, or I might even sprinkle in a little surprise here and there. Just add some variety to my collection here, and there's been a lot more videos that I pumped out here in the last couple weeks here because it's been very cold outside, and I've only been going out when I absolutely need to, and keep myself occupied and sane. I've been staying inside, and this is one of the things I do for my hobby. So that's why I've been wearing toques in my last few videos here. So go Flames go. But let's get on with the N64 here, as it was definitely the second most nostalgic system that I have, and the fact that there's one particular game company that is in someone else's hands now, that there's a lot of games from Rareware that I loved, that Microsoft owns their rights now. That's why they're on that platform and not Nintendo, and there's all these royalty fees why you can't bring it back even on virtual consoles here. But of course, I remember when I got rid of my PlayStation there, I had too many problems with it reading the disc there, and I just was ready to part with it and wanted to get back to the Nintendo world here because I missed, Super Mario and that and all the other characters. But I do remember one of the first games I bought was Diddy Kong Racing, and actually that was made by Rareware. It actually got remade for the DS, but I think someone else made it, which in that Personal Log, I would go through all my games for that. But I remember getting Diddy Kong Racing there because there was kind of a choice between Mario Kart, which I eventually got the Mario Kart 64 there, but the Diddy Kong Racing I actually thought was a better racing game because it kind of meshed in that racing element, which Mario Kart definitely started the whole genre and all these spin-offs with absolutely everybody under the sun with different franchises. I was trying to think of the right word to say, Nickelodeon, SpongeBob, or Garfield, my favorite cartoon cat, but it was racing at its purest form here. Diddy Kong Racing took that and it better, expanded upon it, and that's ultimately how things evolve here is, I mean, for example, let's say, if you want to make your thumbnails or channel art there's Canva, and that's one, or PixArt. You take a template and, and you modify and expand on it to make it yours. And Diddy Kong Racing did that. As it was brilliant, as it was a racing adventure game. But think of a, kart racing game where you race in a car, obviously, but you race in a boat and a plane. That was revolutionary at the time. So that was definitely one of the first games that I had for the Nintendo 64 there. Of course, this was actually one of the last times that, keep in mind this was in 1998, where $90 for a game. I mean, I remember the games, some of the great games were like $90. And I remember spending $90 for Super Mario 64 where I used to live. There was a strip mini mall there, and actually this is back when we used to still had Kmart's in Canada there before the Hudson Bay Company took over, and then the Kmart got demolished and the whole strip mall where I lived across the street was been all remodeled and that, but there used to be a Kmart right across the street where I live, and that's where I spent $90 for a Super Mario 64 there. And you know what? For that price at that time, keep in mind this was 22 years ago. Jeez, I'm getting old here. But 22 years ago, it was still worth it at the time, because Super Mario 64 definitely was the first time that you saw Super Mario in the 3D. And man, that was a great game. It has high replay value because of the fact that you have all the worlds. I remember if there was 15 worlds, you collect stars. It was just neat how the castle expanded, and you jump into paintings, and you go to these different worlds, and you have different tasks to do in the same world. And I believe it all changes enough. I mean, you collect the 8 coins, and that's where it kind of started with the Super Mario today. But man, that was an awesome, awesome game. Even though I spent $90 at the time back in 1998, which that's almost like spending like $140, $150 for a game now. But it was still awesome then, and I still love to play Super Mario 64 when I can there. Actually, I think that game came out in 1996 there, so 24 years. But it wasn't until 1998, the late part of 1997, early part of 1998, that I got my Nintendo 64 there. But yeah, it's Super Mario 64. Actually, I'm not too sure. If anyone asks me what do you think is the best Super Mario game there, I mean, that's actually a tough one there, because I'm obviously always most nostalgic for the classic series, especially the first one there. The second one was kind of a dark sheep there, and then the third one of the NES versions, I think was the best one. And then the Super Mario World for NES, that was that was also a great game too. So they're all great in their own unique ways, but the Super Mario 64 definitely expanded on, and it transitioned into the 3D world very, very well there. I mean, you had to get the odd glitchy camera angles and that, but that was also in the era where some games that were stuck in the 2D were trying to make that step to the 3D. It was still done very well, and it still stands the test of time there. And I mean, obviously it's perfected now, especially with the Super Mario Galaxies, for example, or whatever the latest one, Odysseys. I don't have the latest console there, and maybe I'll eventually get to that Y. I mean, obviously I don't have the time, but yeah, it definitely started that 3D, and I still love the Super Mario 64 to the day, and I almost feel, it's just nostalgia overload there. So now get into the Rareware games there, which now their rights got sold to Microsoft here. You know what I'm going to get at here, that I definitely own this game, and I still think it kicks ass and is awesome today, is Goldeneye with Pierce Brosnan. That definitely was one of the best-selling games for the Nintendo 64 there. And actually, that was probably the game that kind of inspired me to get even more interested in the James Bond movies franchise there. I mean, I was a teenager there, and you start figuring out your taste and genre and the kind of movies you like there. But definitely got me more interested in the James Bond, and it was definitely a fun, shooter game there, and definitely was fun where you had four friends there. But that was an awesome game. Named Spawn, the Goldeneye game. And that game, actually, after I played that game, and then I made a point to, that's really spawned on me to get interested in the James Bond films, based on the Ian Fleming novels. By the way, there, and some people say that Sean Connery, the original Bond, was the best one, but Pierce Brosnan, he made a damn good Bond too, and Daniel Craig, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think. The last movie, I think, pushed, actually, it was his best one. Not too sure if it was Casino Royale or, I forget, but Daniel Craig, I'm going to say he was no Pierce Brosnan, but if Sean Connery is the best Bond, Pierce Brosnan's got to be second. But, that's not the debate that I actually am going to start here, but that might cause some fear in the gaming community, but it followed that movie well. Like, starting in the dam, and then in Siberia. It followed the movie to the T. I was blown away, because there's not very often that a game from a movie are great. See LGN, Back to the Future? Anyone? Or Street Fighter? Or Mortal Kombat, where the game kicks ass, but the movie sucked. Or a case where you have a movie that kicks ass, but the game sucked. This was a rare time that it was both were great. So, and unfortunately, Rareware, their property is owned by Microsoft now, so it's harder to get it on Nintendo now because they're paying the royalties there. And, it's competition. I mean, Nintendo and Microsoft are in competition there. That's like, Calgary and Edmonton, except when they both have stinky assets, it's easy to change there, but that does not work there, and it's probably a bad comparison there. But that was the best Rareware game for the N64 was GoldenEye there. Another Rareware game that I liked was, obviously Diddy Kong Racing, but then I think it was someone else that made the game there and for the DS, because it brought that back and it kind of built upon it. But I also remember Banjo Kazooie, because from Diddy Kong Racing there was the Banjo character that actually spawned that, and it was kind of a cutesy kids game, but I still love playing that game too. Into my late teens and early adult here. Banjo Kazooie, that was definitely a fun puzzle adventure game, which now Microsoft owns its rights there. Then I think I briefly played Banjo Tooie, which is the sequel to that. But the first one, in that case, I felt was the best one. Another Rareware game that I thought was awesome, that actually kind of, shows their darker side of their creative games, is Perfect Dark. I remember having fun. I only rented that game because I think it was late in my tenure with the N64, but I remember we were playing the heck out of it. Back in the day when you go to this place called a video store, remember that, people? Or, that's what we used to do. We go to this place called a video store. They had movies and games where you come in and you hope they have that copy, and you have it for a few days in a thing called renting, and then you got to make sure you return it in time or you get charged late fees. It's kind of the same concept like renting a vehicle, but that's never going to go away, renting vehicles. But now, that was back then, but I remember having much fun with Perfect Dark there. It was just a dark, it was definitely made for the older gamers, and that this was in the era where people thought, well, games is just for kids and babies, but now actually these days you have games, especially now you have mature rated games, especially Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty, where those are definitely made for older gamers. Those are not recommended for children and 5-year-olds there. So I definitely enjoyed Perfect Dark as a rental there. I wish I owned it, and maybe if I had time I'll emulate it and play that. And then actually another game that I felt was fun to play was also made by Rareware, and also the fact that made the transition from 2D to 3D very well, considering they both started their humble beginnings. Actually, Donkey Kong. And actually that's where that Super Mario was. He was actually known as Jumpman, trying to save Princess Peach here. But Donkey Kong 64 was also another awesome, adventure game where it expanded on the Donkey Kong family. And at that time, I also remember there was that funny rap at the start of the game, which there's YouTube videos on that, and the fact you play Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong and all the whole family there. And it kind of expanded on the Banjo Kazooie concept there. And actually, that was also the first game that I remember. I remember buying it the day it came out at Walmart because I had to buy it, and it had that expansion pack there, which increased the the expansion capacity of the Nintendo 64, the graphic capacity, because it was a more powerful game there, and I believe Perfect Dark also needed that. But then once you had that, you're set, and it came with it, thankfully. But and I think if you rented that game, I think they provided it just in case. But yeah, I remember playing the Donkey Kong 64, and I remember there were sequences in that game where there was you go in some metal dungeon or something, and you get to briefly play the original Donkey Kong. The 3 levels there where you're trying to avoid the barrels, the fire, save Princess, but only have Donkey Kong grab Peach and climb up even more there. That was fun. But another thing that I find very funny in that Donkey Kong game is just a soundbite, because you play challenges and all that to advance in the game, and you have to do it in a certain amount of time. And then when you do it in a certain amount of time, I remember the "Well done." That was hilarious. Well done. I haven't played that card out yet, but let's say if I go to a restaurant, that'd be nice to have that as a ringtone, or just say that, "Hello, sir. What do you want for dinner here?" And you say, "I like my steak." And then, the waiter or waitress will say, "How do you want your steak?" I'll say, "Well done." Or someone at work said, "I accomplished it. Well done." Enough of that. But beyond the well done, it was definitely an awesome game there. And, I wish... Apparently there were some rumors that eventually it was going to go on the Virtual Console somehow, but it wasn't. So emulator is the way to go there. But now, speaking of starting a debate here, it wasn't until I owned the Nintendo 64 there that I actually played The Legend of Zelda the first time. I did not play it on the original. I didn't own it. It just didn't appeal to me for some reason, but I kind of regret that I should have. Because eventually I loved the series from the other, especially playing the older games on the handhelds that I had afterwards. But my first Zelda game that I played, and I think is the best Zelda game, if you might know it again, is the Ocarina of Time. That is the best game for the Nintendo 64. I'm going to say might even be one of the best games of all time. I almost would say they should make a movie about it, but I'm afraid that going back to you when I say movies and video games generally don't often make good of each other, where you have crappy games but great movies, or you have great movies but they make crappy games, vice versa. Goldeneye was the rare case, and it followed that storyline to the T from the game there. But The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, I still get giddy playing that game. That is the best Zelda game. I know that some would disagree. I know my sister, she is even more of a Zelda fan than I am. And she definitely not too sure if which one is her favorite now. But I think the Ocarina of Time is the best one. It was just the perfect, time travel, all the adventures and that. That made me wish I played the original Zelda games. And I did eventually there. And they were great at their time there. But that one definitely really, really, really stepped up to the 3D very well. And that was a beautifully orchestrated game. And I still get giddy beating Ganondorf playing that now. It's definitely an epic adventure there. And apparently there's another thing that also starts debate here. If you search on YouTube there, one of the temples you go to. And I noticed it after, actually, when I got the 3DS, where I got down to the handheld, and I was even more giddy. And it made a better game even better. But remember, I had the original on the earlier versions of the Legend of Zelda, the Ocarina of Time. And one of the temples you go to is the Fire Temple. And I had the Islamic version, they call it, the chanting version. But then apparently it, I mean, gee, this was back in 1998 when the game came out. Imagine if it came out today and had that. Woo! That's a whole new can of worms there. But I remember playing the 3DS version. I thought, this song sounds a little different than what I remember. But if you go on YouTube here and type in Fire Temple, you got the version that was on the later games and on the 3DS. Then there's a chanting version. I had the chanting version. It kind of sounded very Islamic, but I think it was just generic gibberish noise. I don't know. But it definitely, that was why they changed that. But that started the controversy in there. But other than that, it's a beautifully orchestrated game there. And, how that game finished definitely lets you thinking of what if. Like, it kind of just had that cliffhanger of a finish. Because you build up, you eventually beat Ganondorf and, the Triforce there. I'll just leave it at that. And then after you beat him, you still have to run down before that whole castle collapses. And it had a cliffhanger of a finish. And, man, I still get giddy playing that game. I still get giddy. I mean, it stands the test of time. I mean, obviously it looks dated by comparison, but, man, that's the best game. And some actually labeled that like was the best game of the century, millennium, during that time there. That's the best Zelda game. Convince me otherwise, people. I want you to convince me. Obviously, I also don't have time now to play, more modern Zelda games, but this one has to be the best one. It's just my opinion, but yeah. But then the other game I actually played, and it was kind of a darker version of the Ocarina of Time. I felt it was a little harder to play. And actually, one of my favorite YouTubers that I watch that talks about games, and he definitely bashes LGN, but is Cinemasker, also known as the Angry Video Game Nerd. He actually did an episode on the other Legend of Zelda game, the Majora's Mask there, and it was just hilarious how he raged on that game. And, it's still a great game. It's not the Ocarina of Time, and, some people that are definitely a lot more hardcore Zelda fans than I am, some actually think that was the best Zelda game. It expanded on the concept because there was a mask shop in the Ocarina of Time there, and definitely time travel was in this game, and it just felt like a more complicated game. And maybe if I was younger and playing that and had more time to invest in it, but it just was a different, darker game. I don't know if it kind of, built on that cliffhanger finish there. I didn't finish that game because I had less time to, invest in it. But, I definitely, like I say, it's still a great game. It's still worth playing. But the Ocarina of Time, I keep going back, and that was the best Zelda game. But those are the two big titles there. Although I haven't bought it yet for the DS for to have on the go there, but but yeah, you can also watch the Angry Video Game Nerds take on that game. It tied in, New Year's, the ball dropping, the moon dropping. It was cleverly timed on his part there, and he's definitely a very funny, entertaining YouTuber. So if you like video games or like how he takes on bad games there, watch him. But unless you already know about him, if you come on to me there. So but yeah, the Ocarina of Time got me interested in the other Zelda games there. And the other games I definitely remember playing for the Nintendo 64 there. Well, I definitely, there was definitely some underrated games. I remember there was one game called Glover. And all it is a ball and your glove. And, it was just, it was a nice adventure game there. I think that game is very underrated. So I'm not too sure, if that game is it's mixed reviews, but I remember playing Glover, and I think I only rented that. I don't remember owning it. I first looked at it in the magazine, and I thought, that's the silliest thing ever. A game about a hand and a ball, and they have to live with each other, and I mean, it was a nice, kind of adventure platform where the ball and the glove need each other. But that was a fun game too, Glover. So that's definitely an underrated game. I also remember playing Star Wars. This was the time when the original trilogy got revived and re-released in theaters for the 20th anniversary. I forget which one it was called, but it was kind of a mix of the Empire Strikes Back and the New Jedi. I remember playing that Star Wars role-playing game where you play as Luke Skywalker, and it's kind of its own unique Star Wars game. That was fun. I remember owning that. And then, speaking of kind of going Goldeneye and movie here, I remember I played the game first and then I watched the movie, was Mission Impossible. And it was definitely, it kind of, after Goldeneye, it kind of set the bar very high there. But it definitely... let's just say it was a so-so game. I mean, it definitely was higher consequences there, but that game didn't seem to follow the movie, or I think it was just the, this is the movie, this is the game, and I know there was that classic scene where Tom Cruise is the main character in the original Mission Impossible, where it's avoiding the lasers there, and, it was definitely a different game, but, it was an okay game. I never remember finishing it, but, it definitely expanded on the GoldenEye. And then the other games I remember, I think I remember it was on the system. It was called Winback. And, no, that Fade to Black, that was on PlayStation. But Winback was one game. I think it was another role-playing shooter game. I think that one's underrated. But I also remember playing Rainbow Six. I believe that was on the Nintendo 64. That kind of got me a little interested in the Tom Clancy there. And then there was a couple other interesting games that I played for the sports. I mean, obviously Madden had a nice, up to the graphics there. I definitely remember. Wayne Gretzky's hockey was okay, but it just looked weird with that ice hockey there. I definitely enjoyed the NHL games that looked more realistically and more to its purest form at the time. And then obviously, actually for Major League Baseball, there actually was a fun baseball game, was the Ken Griffey Baseball. Ken Griffey Jr.'s baseball there. He was the featured athlete in the game there, but it's a baseball game that had all the licensing, so you can use the team, the player names there. But the one thing I actually loved to do in that game was doing that stadium tour, and it was a step up there, and seeing all the unique baseball stadiums at the time there, and it definitely looked nice there, and had a nice trippy music, and you see it at daytime, nighttime, and all those extra features in that game there. And I mean, I did also remember playing other Major League Baseball games, like the generic Major League Baseball game, where the stadiums, definitely looked crisp at that time there, and looked beautiful there. Took a while before eventually the NHL games, where the arena and the fans kind of looked like the inside of the arena there, because I mean that's the difference with hockey and football and baseball, is you see the more features of the actual arena a lot more noticeable in football and baseball as opposed to hockey there. But eventually the video games caught up where the arena, where if you played the arena for hockey, let's say in the Saddledome, that it definitely had those elements of the Saddledome that makes you unique. That definitely looks like the Saddledome there. So I remember that. And then a couple fighting games. Well, I actually had Mortal Kombat Trilogy for the Nintendo 64 there, so I definitely had that. I eventually warmed up to Mortal Kombat there, and the Trilogy was kind of the nice way to have those 3 games there. I think other fighting games I had, I actually never played Super Smash Brothers there, but I had Mortal Kombat Trilogy there. Some people seem to like Clay Fighter 63 in the third there, and I didn't care too much for that game. I don't know, it just didn't appeal to me. And I forget this one game it's called, but I remember it involved a snack. It was a snack game, and I remember the main character had a long tongue, and you navigate through mazes there. the name slips my mind, but I only rented it. But that was a fun game, and it was a fun short game. But it involved snack levels and that. And then speaking of race, I mean there were a ton of racing games on the Nintendo 64 there. I mean I remember obviously Mario Kart, Diddy Kong Racing there, but I do remember I think there was a Ridge Racer 64 that was made, and based on the Namco there, and I mean there was other racing games that slipped my mind. I know the Cruising USA was at best, and same with the San Francisco Rush, but that was kind of like a spin off from the Crazy Taxi that Sega had. I mean Sega definitely started that genre of racing where you drive like a maniac and try to drive it the quickest time possible there. But I mean there were definitely, I felt there was too many racing games for the Nintendo 64 for some reason there. And then I remember there was actually this made it on the Nintendo 64 that I remember just renting it, but it was on the PlayStation at the time, and I remember it was called Vigilante 8, and it was another kind of as a spin-off from the Twisted Metal from the PlayStation there. So I remember that, and then there were a couple snowboarding games that were funny. Well, I remember the 1080 snowboarding there, and it had a funny commercial, and I remember his name was Jehu, and it was showing the advertisement of the game where the guy was playing out in the desert there, enjoying the winter sports, and showed him snowboarding in the. I'm sure that's on the YouTube somewhere, that commercial. But he was like, "Watch out for Jehu." But then another snowboarding game that was kind of funny and cute, just to hear the soundbite, was actually called Snowboard Kids. So I remember hearing Snowboard Kids. It had a funny music to it, and I remember in that was fun, and it was kind of a cutesy snowboarding game, and it kind of gave you the taste of the Japanese culture there. And I remember there was one level where you were sliding down like a colorful flower forest or whatever. That you see that in Japan there. There was a second one. I didn't play that one, but I think that's after when I sold my Nintendo 64 and went to the handhelds here. But I remember the Gretzky hockey game, all the hockey games, the baseball games, and then the fighting games. I had Mortal Kombat, and I think that's the only one that I had there. And then another one that I'm trying to think that I'm not too sure what I remember having fun with is like I say, I already mentioned the Diddy Kong Racing there, and then I mentioned the Banjo Kazooie. Or I did remember playing. Obviously, there was the Nagano Olympics there. That was a fun game to relive the Olympics at the time there, because it was in Nagano back in 1998 there. I remember there were some board games that I played that just showed like a bigger advanced version of the chess there. Oh yeah, I just spawned on a couple other games there. I obviously forgot, I should mention this. I mentioned in the Game Boy and the Game Boy Advance there, Tetris. Well, I definitely, going from the 2D to the 3D, I definitely remember Tetrisphere. And that was an awesome Nintendo 64 game there, Tetrisphere there. It was definitely a unique way to spin on Tetris there. And it was, I think his name was Neil D. Voss there. I actually downloaded the music files to have the soundtrack, because it was definitely an awesome soundtrack for the Tetrisphere game. And then the new Tetris was the same Neil D. Voss that made the games for the new Tetris there, which kind of ramped up the Tetris. I mean, I still like the original one the best, but Tetrisphere and the new Tetris that was on the Nintendo 64 there, it really amped that up as well to become in the 3D there. And then I just thought of another game that it updated the classic there and kind of had an interesting soundtrack, and it was one of the Williams game, was Robotron. I remember renting Robotron 64 there, and I realized that was the classic game that was on the coin-op to the 3D, and that was actually a nice fast-paced shooting game there as well. Is the Robotron 64. There were definitely a lot of 64s there. Oh yeah, then Star Fox 64 there. That was a great game, but I think the one on the Super Nintendo actually was better, and they don't seem to look at that one as highly. And then Star Fox 64. I remember renting Pilot Wings, and I never played the Super Nintendo version there, but actually I think that was one of the launch titles for the Nintendo 64 there. It was different, but I casually liked that, but I never owned it. But I remember renting that, and that was okay. And then there was Pilot Wings there. I also remember the Rogue Squadron for the Star Wars, and then there was that Star Wars racer game, because you had I forget the episode 4 there it's called. I'm just only a casual Star Wars fan, but the prequel trilogy, because the original one's the best one, but they had that racing game that was inspired in episode 4 there, so that was actually another fun racing game themed for the Star Wars there, and had a lot of depth to the game there. So yeah, I mean, there was definitely many games that I remember for the Nintendo 64, either by renting or owning there. But unless I can't think of anything else here, I am going to almost consider this a close here and say, if you enjoy everything I do on my YouTube channel, just make sure you hit like, subscribe, and follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey here, as I mostly cover Calgary sports, the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, Stampeders, game recaps, stories, but do personal vlogs like this, and I came up with many gaming memories here that I like to share here, and hopefully bring back some nostalgia for you guys here. So if you enjoy all that, just make sure you hit like, subscribe, and follow along here. I also do some attempt at comedy and share my experiences with, I'm at sporting events or on the road with my smartphone here. So just make sure you follow along, and I'll just say go Flames go, because I have Flames gear on in this case. But it's just reliving nostalgia with the N64. This was the system that I'm the second most nostalgia for, and hopefully I bring back some more here. And like I say, in my opinion, I wish Nintendo still had Rareware, and the Ocarina of Time is the best Zelda game. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So as I say, I'll see you in the next video.